including incumbent Julius Maada will contest the polls to lead the country for the next 5 years. West Africa Democracy Radio will be there to bring you reports and updates on Election Day and beyond. Join us throughout this week as we engage different political stakeholders and electorates as Sierra Leoneans head to the polls. Through our network of journalists and civil society actors on the ground, WADR will bring regular updates and interviews from different parts of the country and on how the elections unfold. That's the special coverage of the 2023 general elections in Sierra Leone on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, and online at wadr.org. Keep up to date on our social media portals, Twitter and Instagram at WDL News, for a live stream on Facebook and YouTube on West Africa Democracy Radio English service. Sierra Leone Decides and West Africa Democracy Radio cover. This is the live coverage of the 2023 general elections in Sierra Leone. You can also follow our live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. West Africa Democracy Radio English service.
It's a beautiful good evening to you out there across the world. Thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. This is the third edition of our live coverage of the election in Sierra Leone, which we simply tagged Sierra Leone Decides. I'm Abdullahi Hassan, bringing you all the happenings, interviews, future reports, videos, profiling, and minute-by-minute update of the elections. Now, in our morning edition, we brought you profiles, interviews with stakeholders, as well as live reports on the field from our correspondents across Sierra Leone. Well, remember, this is the third edition. You've missed out on some vital information, but we are here to make sure you have them. Now, polls opened up 5 hours later in certain areas than the scheduled time, but at 10 a.m., voters queued at different polling stations to commence casting their ballots across the country. Now, more than 3.3 million voters are registered for today's vote, but it is at this moment unknown what percentage or what demographic turned out for the vote. President in office, Julius Maada is running against 12 other candidates for a 5-year term as head of state. His main rival is Dr. Samura Kamara of the All People's Congress APC party. This is the second time that the pair have opposed each other. In 2018, President Bio won by a small margin against Kamara. After casting his vote in Freetown, President Bio urged citizens to follow his lead and exercise their constitutional right to vote. Take a listen.
This way. Well, I have only come to one center, and because of you guys, it's a little bit. I think for others, it's much better. I hope it is good elsewhere. Here it's a little too crampy because of you guys. So far, I've checked with other districts, towns, and other centers. I'm happy with them. I will know my fate after it's finished. I cannot know my fate before. Go out and vote. It's your right, constitutional right. And today is when you choose your mayor for us in the city here, your member of parliament, your councillor, and also your president standing before you. So go out and vote peacefully. Vote Safu. Go back Safu. Sit on Safu. Wait for the results Safu. If you win, celebrate Safu one. If you lost, have a sit on Safu. No.
There you had it, the incumbent President Julius Maada Bio. Now, I think there's a lot to learn from Sierra Leoneans, especially when it comes to Creole. I mean, you had him there with Safo. That's beautiful, but I think there's a lot to learn also on that part. I mean, we need to know what it means and how to apply it in our daily affairs. Now, moving on. While in the past week, both main parties, that is the ruling SLPP and the APC, accused each other of attacks on their members, today there have been no reports of major violence. However, authorities remain on high alert. Some voters in separate locations across Sierra Leone reported that they were unable to find their names on the electoral list, therefore unable to vote. The Electoral Commission is however yet to respond to this claim, and Dr. Samura Kamura is on the other hand alleging irregularities.
You, the pressmen, make sure you give accurate information to the people of Sierra Leone. You are not working for Samura Kamara, and you must not be seen to be working for SLPP or Maada Bio. You are working for the people of Sierra Leone. Now, I've talked about my initial observations that the polling stations are too close. They should have given a lot of spacing on the polling stations. You understand? Hygienically, environmentally, when they're clustered like this, it's difficult. You don't breathe fresh air. The next one, on average, there's lateness of over 2 hours. This is not good. Even when you are compensating for time loss, you must make sure that there's adequate protection of the voters and of the staff, because you are moving into the night. You must have adequate lighting. What if it rains? I mean, the way I see the polling stations prepared, if it rains here, you disrupt the whole process. We still have problems accessing our agents, our candidates, our supporters accessing polling stations and polling centers in Pujahu and Moyamba. It is not right. And if these people do not access the centers or polling stations, I cannot see how you declare these elections to be free and fair. You cannot. In the southeast, we have 7 districts. I think we have mentioned this to all election observers, international observers, that they must pay due attention. So how supporters of the All People's Congress, the staff of the All People's Congress, agents of the All People's Congress are being deprived to access the polling centers and the polling stations in the southeast, particularly Bonth and Pujahu. I want them to realize, I addressed them yesterday, that we are all Sierra Leoneans. Let them vote for Sierra Leone. Vote for Sierra Leone. Let your conscience vote for Sierra Leone. The fourth area I want to address, I've just been informed that there are stations, there are certain centers where the presidential and mayoral ballots are not available. I don't know whether members of the press here have heard about that. I think we have to correct that. Now, another concern this morning, I have not proved it, but I heard it, that there's a discrepancy in the final voter register. That's given to the political parties which they are using and the one which NEC officials are using. And that's why over the months we have been complaining that a final voter registration is not only for political parties, it's for the general public, for every voter. And these final voter registers must be published way ahead of the elections.
That was Dr. Samura Kamara, the presidential flag bearer of the main opposition party, the All People's Congress, APC. Now, just so you know, polls officially will close by 5. So we assume that by now, polls have closed across Sierra Leone. And the Electoral Commission, ECSL, said earlier that results will be in 48 hours after the closure of polls. Now, the winner must have 55% of the votes to secure a win. Otherwise, a runoff will be held between the 2 leading candidates. Now, that too will be determined by the outcome of the results in 48 hours. So let's join Patrick Salia, who is in Freetown, for more updates. Patrick Salia.
Hello, good afternoon again.
Good evening, Patrick. How are you today?
It's been hectic across Freetown and some other parts of Sierra Leone, hearing and following up upon happenings of the polling day today to actually, be in the thick and thin of what has been boiling, the much talked about June 24th, 2023 general elections, a multi-tier election, which is the third since Sierra Leone returned to multi-party democracy in 1996. So it's been a hectic day, a sunny, shiny, and warm.
Well, Patrick, I'm really happy. I'm really happy that it didn't rain today.
Season.
Exactly, I was going to say that. I'm happy it didn't rain today, so it allowed people to actually stay on the queue for as long as they could to make sure that they enjoy their civic right.
Yeah.
Yes, and so for a lot of Sierra Leoneans, it has been Safo. So tell us, how would you rate the turnout of voters? I mean, the ECSL had said that over 3.3 million people registered for today's ballot. But can you assess really the turnout rate?
Well, if you look at the issues that have been boiling prior to the polling day today, as compared to the turnout, then it will amaze anyone who might have heard or might have been hearing or seeing situations unfold prior to today. The turnout today has been massive. The polling centers have had a lot of voters turn out to cast their ballots for their favorite candidates, political parties as well as independent candidates in the ongoing polls, which is supposed to officially close by 5. But by virtue of the fact that voting did not start largely in most parts of the country, the ECSL has extended voting time. That we'll get to hear shortly, possibly later in the broadcast. But the turnout has been massive, and people have been patiently waiting in the queues. Some elderly voters or some people who have been physically challenged have taken the pains to make sure they cast their ballot. In fact, especially those who voted in their areas, in the communities where they reside, some of them who are elderly people who have physical challenge to stand for a long time, they asked community people to help them with benches and chairs, to help them sit and wait for their turn. But preferences have been given to those set of people, those special needs people like aged people, the persons with disabilities, and suckling mothers who have been given special preferences to cast their ballot earlier before the other physically able people.
And Patrick, I think that is the right thing to do, really.
Officials and slow down. In fact, some people spent 15 minutes casting their ballot because it's a 4-in-1 elections altogether. So that's a timing to cast the ballot for one person, 2 per one go before you're giving another set of 2 ballot papers. So for some people, they are slow enough. So that has added to the timing that has delayed the voting process, that is causing the queues to still be where some of them have been, some delayed, some have been moving faster based on the officials that are manning the areas, and based on the orientation some voters already have in certain centers. They went to vote.
Very well. So the whole of the success, according to you, or if I'm right to quote you, is largely a combination of factors. But Patrick, let me get you right. The turnout rate today is beyond imagination, and I really want to understand. The election is taking place today. Amidst complaints or agitations, really, by Sierra Leoneans. One is the high cost of living. You have unemployment. Others have complained of bad governance, and now. What are some of the major reasons that forced Sierra Leoneans to go out today to cast their vote? You've spoken to a few people. What are some of the major reasons?
Well, primarily, you mentioned the factors already that have pushed Sierra Leoneans to go out and cast their ballot. But you remember I earlier mentioned the weather, because some people had earlier on, prior to the polling day today, grumbled about the downpours these days. that if it rains, they will not risk it to go out and cast their ballot. But thankfully, and lucky for the polling day today, it's been a sunny and shiny day with no rains absolutely across Freetown. Well, maybe in some other parts of the country there has been rain, reported downpour. But in most parts that I've called and followed up, there has been no downpour as far as the electioneering process is concerned. But the issues are not new to Sierra Leoneans. In fact, some people have been saying the reason some people held back from taking part in the elections process was because no matter who they elect into office, the problems are not going to solve, because they have been given the same campaign promises over the last 5 elections. This making the sixth election since 1996.
Very well.
They have been
Patrick,
promises.
Patrick, hold on.
These promises have not been coming to reality. So the turnout today is the basics, tribal and regional sentiments and the love for political parties. The political party wants support or candidates they support. So these are the factors more or less. But some people today who have not been able to register to vote today, I tell you, Abdullah and the rest of the team, must have been expressing their regrets, seeing their neighbors going out to cast their ballots in the huge turnout we have seen and the massive turnout we have seen in this polling day today.
You said most Sierra Leoneans are used to these campaign promises, and oftentimes when these leaders are elected, nothing changes. There's rarely any change. But something is different this time. What is it?
Well, the economic crisis or the economic problems Sierra Leone is faced with, Sierra Leoneans are faced with. Well, it's no secret amongst Sierra Leoneans, and in fact the world, that there is a global financial crisis, there is a global economic crisis, and in fact Sierra Leone, which is a net importer, is feeling the brunt, because even toothpick is being imported in Sierra Leone. So the cost of living is increasing almost on a daily basis. In fact, prior to the polling day yesterday, when people went to the market in that last minute marketing or last minute shopping, prices more than doubled. For them. In fact, some people were not even able to buy based on the budget they had already for those shoppings. So the cost of living is high. In fact, the inflation has almost more than doubled since the last 5 years, possibly, according to analysts, at around 26%, 26 or 26.5% inflation rate. So this is really a problem. The exchange rate, the leones to the dollar, which before the elections, few days to the elections, plummeted by 200 or 300 leones. Now, on the day before election, the eve of the election, skyrocketed again. Which suggested to so many people that there was an auction of a huge amount of the dollar, so that they can be able to stabilize the currency. Well, some people are already concluded, and it was politics that they played, so that Sierra Leoneans feel that the situation might get better if for example, the incumbent president is re-elected. So
Patrick,
these are the analyses that are mounting so far, and the situation Sierra Leoneans are faced with.
Very well. So, Patrick, just before I let you go, and you have to be very brief on this, for most of the polling stations across Sierra Leone, polls open late. That means the voting process actually commenced late too, and the ECL has announced an extension of the closing hour. Now, there are those who really said their names were missing from the voters list. Has anything been done to rectify that problem and get them to vote for their candidate of choice?
These are issues the Chief Electoral Commissioner of Sierra Leone, Mr. Mohamed Kone, has been addressing in the press conference that has just ended here at the Bintuman International Conference Center, where they have their situation hub. We'll get time to listen to him shortly as the broadcast continues for the day. But he spoke to a good number of issues, and I'm sure the issue of missing names he touched on, but that's not an issue which many people have said is major, because the number of people whose names are missing are very isolated. The only problem many people are concerned about is some have not been able to collect their voters' ID card. Some collected their voters' ID card with misinformation on them, incorrect pictures and certain detail bio data that were missing or misplaced. But the ECSL has been encouraging them that once they go to the polling centers, they will be able to correct that, because the correct information of those voters are on the voters list, different possibly from what they have on their voters list. So these are issues, however, that have been major, other than just missing names, which is an isolated concern.
Thank you very much, Patrick Salia. We hope to get you back much later for more update, right? Well, if you are just tuning in, this is West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal on 94.9 FM and online on WADR.org. And this is Sierra Leone Decide, the third edition of WADR's coverage of the elections in Sierra Leone. We have 13 presidential candidates and about 3.3 million voters who will today decide who becomes the next president and what policies or reforms will be brought in to help steer the country in the right direction, according to them. With me in the studio is Mamadou Chor, a political analyst with vast knowledge of regional politics and governance. Good evening, sir. Good to have you join us.
Nice inviting me here in your studio.
I mean, you're a regular person, but it's good to have you in person right now.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mamadou Chor.
It's my pleasure.
Very well.
As always.
Thank you. Now, my very first question to you will be, how would you assess Sierra Leone's journey so far, especially in the practice of democracy and their attempt to uphold democratic values? I mean, they went from civil war and to practicing democracy. And so far, though, there have been issues of bad governance here and there, rights abuses, but still, they've been able to keep going. What would be your assessment?
Yeah, I think Sierra Leone came a long way. When you look at the civil war with these, consequences, and then they waited until 2018 for the first political change at the presidency with the election of the incumbent Julius Maada Bio. There can be another change, political change today after the results, because 5 years ago we knew that there was a runoff for Maada Bio to be elected. It meant that between him and Samora Kamara, it's a tight race.
Again.
I mean, everything can happen. At least it showed that democracy is on the right track in this country, and we have to be proud of that, because in most African countries, having this fair process is something unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Very well, like you said. Now, what would you attribute this success to, Mr. Mamadou Chor?
Yeah, I think I compare most of the time French-speaking countries and English-speaking countries. And to be honest, English-speaking countries are ahead, because when you look at Nigeria, Ghana, never ever in this country people will be debating about, getting a third term, which is a hot debate right now in Senegal, in other countries like Cote d'Ivoire. At least we see that they, found a solution, and they knew that democracy is a change in power. There is no kind of messiah who is coming to stay very long. Because as I said always, when you are elected in a democracy, when you have been in power for 10 years, those people who put you there, they want a new face. No matter you want it or not, they want something else to come in and then, take over. But, those who are elected sometimes, they believe that they have been elected and put there by people who they must be serving. Instead of that, most of the time, I said it in the French version, that when somebody is elected and then people start calling him the boss, it means he's on the bad track. I mean, when you are elected, you are serving the people.
So you should be like the chief servant instead.
That's it. That's
Yes.
it. And you should bear in mind that as long as you are in power. But when you let people calling you the boss, I mean, they are maroon you from the reality of the country.
For their own interest.
That's it. That's it. And then at the time, you no longer know what is happening. Talking to the guys in Sierra Leone, Julius Maada Bio was elected, promising, for a better life for Sierra Leone. But we know what happened in 2022 with this deadly protest, because most Sierra Leoneans can make ends meet. I mean, time is hard for them. The economy is. The guy you got just a while ago was saying that the price doubled. It means
just last week.
It's very hard time for people, and I think no matter who will be elected tonight, he have to do his best to make the economy of Sierra Leone booming again, because Sierra Leoneans are in hard times.
But most countries right now, sir, across Africa are struggling economically. Ghana recently went to IMF for $3 billion. Nigeria is the same thing. That profile, just keeps climbing. So Sierra Leone is not alone in this.
Yeah, you're right. But when you look at all these countries, Ghana, even Sierra Leone, what they have as part of their natural resources, and then you look at how underdeveloped they are. You tell yourself, what is the problem? And I think that is the main problem is a matter of leadership. Those who are in power think more of they are there to serve, and then not there to to gather the money and corruption and things like that. And it brings me back to Madabio. He promised to fight corruption, but we know that we are far from there at the end of his first term.
Now, you said something, 2018, Madabio and
Samura Kamara.
Now we have a second term face-off. And citing Cote d'Ivoire, what happened 2010, 2011, most times post-election violence can be deadly.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually say that they fear what will happen today, but unfortunately,
because there are ethnic consideration in when you look at how things are unfolding there. But I think if we play democracy, it's a reality in most African countries. People think about Samura Kamara is part of. I'm giving just an example, the north of the country. So normally all the people there should be voting for him. This is not democracy. Even if maybe he can have the majority there, but I think Julius Maada Bio can do better in Samura Kamara territory and vice versa. That's his democracy. We should not playing on ethnic consideration. This is very bad, and in a fragile country like Sierra Leone, it's not a good thing.
And for many, they fear that if adequate care is not taken, they might just find themselves back with old memories.
Yeah.
But we'll come back to you shortly. Right now, we understand clearly, and like Mamadou Cho would agree, that election observation is fundamentally an exercise in support of democracy and serves as impartial watchdogs that can assess whether the result of an election truly reflects the will of the people. Genuine democratic elections do not guarantee democratic governance, but are a prerequisite for it. They provide political legitimacy for elected leaders and a foundation from which to govern, reducing the scope of non-democratic challenges to power. In Kenema, one of the districts in Sierra Leone, the civil society organization Native Consortium is amongst the local election observer organization in Sierra Leone. And our correspondent there, Philip Koroma, spoke with the head of Native Consortium, Lahai Galiva.
Well, as it is, we have not had any major concerns relating to pooling and so on and so forth. There are no skirmishes. There were some issues of some centers not opening as scheduled, 7 o'clock. But I mean, it was not that much an alarm situation. It was so ECSL called ECSL to the center, and that was resolved. There was this there were ballot boxes without covers. And so, but they came in and then resolved the problem. So far, I mean, the whole place is peaceful. I just left Kailan district, Daru specifically this morning. I'm now in Kenema. And along the way, there are no issues of residencies or violence or whatever. The place is peaceful. Everybody is happily voting, to elect their leaders.
There are a few centers complaining of late arrival of electoral materials. What have you done as CSO monitoring these elections?
We always make reference to those issues, and then we call ECSL to come in and act on those problems promptly. And I've said we had one or two issues of that kind, and then they came in and quickly they were able to resolve that problem.
So generally, how would you want to assess the voter turnout?
It's good. The voter turnout story. There's a long queues. People are standing in queues all over, and the voting is really progressive. It's as if the ECSL officials, those who are manning the elections, are really up to task because the process is really fast. Well, the challenge has to do about the start of the processes. Just as I said, some police centers did not really open on time, and the election officers were there, but there were a lot of other issues of organizing themselves and so on and so forth. That took some time and some polling stations. But in future, we would like the ECS to ensure that everything the polling officials would like to have the centers are intact, are correct, are there, all the materials. So we don't want to see some materials missing or are not in place. They have to go back to ECSL, come back with those materials. For example, like the ballot boxes in one of the centers, the boxes hadn't covers, and so we don't know how that was the case. But as I said, they came back, ECSL came back and resolved that problem, and then the voting started at about 8:30 instead of 7 o'clock.
All right, that was Lahai Galiwa, the head of Native Consortium, a civil society organization that also is one among the many election observe organizations in Sierra Leone. Now, Mr. Mamadou Cho, if anything, what I would learn from Sierra Leone, because what we've seen in the last 2 years is democracy backsliding heavily in West Africa. First, we had Mali, and then it was Guinea, and then it was Burkina Faso. Yeah. And what happened in Mali was it happened twice. Same thing as Burkina Faso. What are we to learn from Sierra Leone, despite their numerous challenges?
No, I think when we get this 2-hour delay in the capital city, Freetown, for the vote to start, I mean, it should be blamed on the Electoral Commission, because as we noticed it a few days ago, the opposition didn't trust the president of the Electoral Commission, and then they were protesting. So when you see this thing happening, in the capital city, where most of the time, the capital city are hostile to those people who are in charge. So that's why it can be seen as a sabotage of the whole thing, and people can think that they can be fraud at the end of the day. So that's why the Electoral Commission have the obligation to organize this presidential election in a very correct way, because it had been five years since the last election. They have enough time to do it, and that's why most of the countries, to come back to your question, most of the countries went to crisis from badly organized elections. Yeah, when they are badly organized, the results are disputed, and the military can come and chip in. Even if at the end of the day Julius Maada Bio is re-elected, yes, I mean, there can be protests, and then nobody know what will happen in this very fragile country as Sierra Leone.
Very well. Let's go to Sierra Leone now, where Benz Komba Lebie, an activist and an expert on mineral resources, is standing by. Good evening, Benz.
Yes, good evening. I guess I'm talking to Abdullah.
Exactly, Abdullah Hassan here. How are you today, sir?
Yes, I'm doing pretty good. It's a quiet day in Sierra Leone. We just cast our vote and we are all home listening to our radio stations to get the feedback
Oh,
on the daily. Yeah.
but Bems, I actually would believe that because you're an activist, you want to stay around the polling center and make sure that polls close with you there and make sure that the counts are done accurately and the true result announced.
Yes, that can be done. Well, things are organized here. You can just not be around polling centers under an individual name. So we have a collection of civil society groups that are under the National Elections Watch. We have accredited observers. So there are two classes of observers. We have general observers and we have the priority voter registration observers who are going to send in quick results. For me, I've been walking around, basically touching all the stations, and I think it's time to also be home, because when you are home, you also get information from different places through the radio. But if you are just stuck at one station, then you cannot actually get sufficient information. You may only be hearing from that same station. So I also have a responsibility to get information from across the country.
Well, Bems, as we proceed with our chat, I would like to really ask, you said where you are at the moment, where actually went for your vote, things were rightly done and pretty organized, because what we've also heard is that in certain areas, polls opened late, electoral materials arrived late, and some voters were unable to find their names on the voters list. Was it anything that occurred in your area?
So as I tell you, I'll give you a general perspective, a national perspective.
Okay.
So what actually happened, the delay started from the late arrival of materials from South Africa. And the second challenge the National Electoral Commission Sierra Leone had was also with packaging. Previously, the vendors that will print the ballot papers and the electoral materials will package them in a way that polling centers and polling stations can just pick their package sealed. So the printer made effort in the previous elections to package the materials in the units that makes it very easier for sorting. Unfortunately, may have been due to the haste. This time they were only packaged in bulk and quantities. So for instance, the printer did not make efforts to subdivide the materials by polling centers. Instead, they were just packed by ward. So when they arrived, most of in the district I am now, the materials had arrived yesterday. So overnight, I will tell you, the electoral officers were working throughout the night to sort things out, to pack them, and some had to travel over 3 hours, 4 hours distance. So you can imagine if somebody receives their package at around 4 a.m. this morning or 5 a.m., and they have to cover another 5 hours distance and get the materials where they are supposed to be. That could have been the problem. And in Freetown, even when the materials had arrived, priority was given to the district. So they didn't touch the Freetown materials until most of the districts and the sub-regions got. So they later turned out to Freetown, and that is a very huge number of materials you'll be talking about. So that was actually, I spoke to a few workers. They told me that was actually the reason for the delay of arrival of materials at polling stations, because they had to do further sorting here. Unlike previously when it would have been easier, you can just take by polling center and give out. Now you have to tear the carton of a ward, then you begin to pack by polling centers. So that time was very costly. at the electoral offices.
Very well, Ben. I just wanted to say that printer issue you just mentioned. Are you sure it's the right printer the government bought? But a printer being unable to do what it's supposed to do. If it's the right printer, then it shouldn't be unable to do what it's supposed to do, right?
So these are lack of capacities within countries. So the printing is done way in South Africa, and in fact, when the flight was to come, it was delayed for another 2 days, and that was all over the radio stations and the television stations. And when the time was finally announced for the flights to land, journalists and other actors were at the airports to receive it. So it's not that the printer did not do the correct thing. The printing was done correctly. I think the effort of doing the packaging to the lower size. So, for instance, if I am printing books for, let me just put it for radio stations in Dakar. If I am printing for all the radio stations, I can just print and pack the pack and give it to the head of the radio stations in Dakar. But if I want to help, I can also sort them further to say, okay, for all the radio stations in Dakar, these are the private radio stations, these are the regional radio stations, these are the government radio stations. And for the government radio stations, these are the ones that are going to the source. So this could have been if time was there, I think the NEC has to be blamed because of time, but it's not clear whether the printer had caused the delay or the request for printing was not placed earlier enough.
Very well.
So that technicality is what we have to. That technicality is what we have to understand. Whether the electoral commissioner did not place the request to the vendor in South Africa on time to do the printing and do the sorting in time, or whether the delay was actually caused by the vendor to have not done the work as per request. I mean, these things are not clear, but I don't think that can cause a greater impact on. I mean, it's not really, because I voted around 3 o'clock, and I will tell you, by the time I was there, I walked in, there was no queue. I walked in, given all the papers and voted. So normally that is actually what happened. People rush based on experience that normally, if you don't get earlier, you may meet that somebody has voted for you, or there may be chaos that you may not be able to vote. So people rush in the morning. Some people go to the stations as early as maybe 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., because by law, voting is supposed to start at 6 a.m. So, okay, this time it's actually 8 a.m., sorry, but previously it used to be 6 a.m.
Very well.
So, but...
So
yeah,
Ben,
Ben,
okay, let me just hold you on there.
Rush in the morning.
Let me just hold you on there. I have a guest with me in the studio, as a political analyst by the name Mamadou Cho. Now, I want you to hang on there, because we'll come back to you on an area that you told me earlier is your specialty, that is human rights and, of course, mineral resource management. Now, Mr. Mamadou Cho, what he just said now is not a peculiar issue to Sierra Leone. Most times what we hear, even the Nigeria elections in February, the country spent hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase equipment that they actually said was procured a year earlier. But just when it was election time, half of this equipment were not functioning right. And till date, the results are still being contested, even though the president-elect has been inaugurated. Now we have this in Sierra Leone. How can countries, let's be more precise to begin with West Africa, manage some of these issues? Why do we keep having this issue? Why is it recurring?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of better planning, because as I told earlier, they have 5 years to prepare a presidential election. When you get this kind of equipment, you have to test it. No matter how long it can take, you take the time to test it. Maybe for the MP, Member of Parliament election, before the president's election, if they are not, done together, or even for the mayor election, as we see here in Senegal, which is quite separate. But I think it's a very big problem to depend on, another country for this equipment, to use it. I mean, a printer, I think that we can find printers in Sierra Leone to do the job.
To do the job, exactly.
Yes, I mean, you depend on South Africa, and then the things come just 2 days before the D-Day. It's a big problem, and it is to be blamed on the Electoral Commission.
And so right now, APC, the major opposition party, their claims of irregularities or fraud, I mean, could really be sustained.
Yep. Yeah. And if they, I mean, suspect that there is some fraud, when you look the big delay early in the morning, I can understand that. I mean, in the countryside in Sierra Leone there can be a delay because sometimes it's very hard to access to some parts of the country. But when in the capital city, I mean, you start with a 2-hour delay. I mean, the opposition party, which is, I mean, most of the capital city are stronghold for the opposition. That we just suspect that. I mean, this electoral commission is trying to
foul play.
Yeah.
Very well. While we're discussing earlier, you did mention how Sierra Leone's economy is actually not moving with the required speed as it should, and that's why you have most of them complaining, right? So, Mr. Bems, let's come back to you. Can you describe Sierra Leone's economy to us in the last 5 years?
Thank you, Abdullah. So we have to start from knowing Sierra Leone, and I will tell you, Sierra Leone has not done better any time before. So that is actually the challenge we have as a country. We have the betterment of every country is the luck of having a decisive and very progressive leader at a time that can turn things over. Unfortunately, Sierra Leone has not been lucky to really have a leader that we can reference and say, under this leader, we have actually had an economic boost, a decisive leadership, a disciplined financial management. So what we saw in the past 5 years is just a trend of what has been happening. And I will tell you, overall, if you talk to the politician, they will point at this, that we did. But me here, standing as an activist and as a critical mind, I will tell you, we have not done better at any time in the history. And that is why we are still poor. That is why electricity service is poor. That is why water sanitation is poor. That is why education is poor. That is why infrastructure is poor. That is why people are poor. And it counts on the past 5 years. Sierra Leone's economy, the GDP was just around 3.8 billion when we started this government in 2018, and it has just staggered around that, very close to 3.9 to 4 billion, and it's not something to praise, and it's all due to poor financial management, fiduciary policies, tax leakages, high bloated salary rates, and the fear of government to negotiate mining lease agreement equitably on behalf of the state. Corruption or bribery are still the case of the governance in our country. So to answer your question, I will say the economy has not been doing any way good in the past 5 years. And comparatively, it has just been the same trend before that. Yeah.
Well, very well, Bems, I'm still going to put you on the hot spot. It's easy for us most times from the outside to assume that something is not being done right, even if whoever is the leader or is our leader is doing his or her best to make sure that it steers at the right direction. So if you were to be elected the president today of Sierra Leone, name 5 key economic policies or reforms that you would embark on. Perhaps that will save Sierra Leone.
I think I remember last when I had a meeting with IMF when they are doing their 6th review of Sierra Leone, and that was my point to them. Don't give us money until you set certain conditions, until these conditions are met. I think here in Sierra Leone, we have to stop mesmerizing with the fight with corruption. The fight of corruption is a key problem we have. And so I mean, there has been effort in this government to strengthen the ACC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, but I will also strengthen them better, make them independent, and also make sure that as they have now in the power to prosecute, to strengthen that. There was a pronouncement for the anti-corruption court to strengthen that so that they can actually take the fight of corruption to the higher class and not the lower class, because that has been the case. Corruption becomes very sound in the areas of people when it is about the opposition, when it is about the lower cadre, when it's about teachers, when it's about the market woman. But once it touches the minister of prominence, then it is being jeopardized, or it is being rationalized. So that is actually the case. I will fight corruption with all policies. Second, I will also strengthen the mineral laws. So we have had an opportunity in 2022. We have reviewed the Mines and Minerals Act of 2009. We had the Mines and Minerals Act of 2009 that has been 2009, that has been reviewed to have now the 2022 Mines and Mineral Development Act. So let me just bring you one example. In the law, previously in 2009, there is a percentage allocation to communities where the mining is being done. And the law says at that time that it should be not less than 1% of 1%. That is 0.01% that should go to communities for development. In the 2022 review, we fought hard so that it can be increased. We, civil society, we are determining to have a minimum of 5%. But then the mining companies, with backing of some international corporations, financial institutions, they were able to restrict the government to sign a 1%. So it has been increased from 0.01% to 1% of the annual turnover of the companies. So that is a significant money, but I will still strengthen the community beneficiation from the mining companies. But also, I will also engage to have the government participation in business. There is this bad concept that government cannot do business. It's not true. Critical commodities like fuel, like the mining minerals, gold, I will leave that in the hands of the state. Should be able to fully be charged of the management of critical resources, so that private companies, and the most unfortunate thing is that most of the actors in this critical, resource sector are foreigners. They are not here to help you. They are not here to make your people better. They are not here to wipe up poverty. They are just here to sap income. So I will be very critical about making sure that the government plays a significant role in the extraction and management of resources.
Very well.
And that is also one. But also disciplined fiduciary management. You can't be spending money than you are earning. It's a personal common sense economics. You can't, even if you are paid $100 per month, you have to spend below $100 per month so that you can have a stable life. You cannot be spending more than you're earning. And this is the problem we have with our government. And
very well.
Cut across. We can create offices overnight and pay the people, and these salaries are not harmonized. You have a lecturer in the university who is earning far lesser than the cleaner of the president or the minister's office, or you just have somebody, a social media blogger, who is getting huge amount of salaries than the professionals.
So Ben,
you have to be sure that there is harmonization of salaries. Yes.
So I think you've mentioned your points already. Just my last question to you, and very briefly, have you made any attempt at all to suggest this to relevant authorities or a personal authority to help address these issues, as you rightly mentioned?
On a daily basis, I will tell you, I live in Freetown and I'm part of so many multi-stakeholder platforms that are discussing these matters. I talk on the radio. The challenge we have in our country or in every African country is the multifaceted interest. You are saying this, the other person is saying this. And our government are made to listen to people who normally either give them money or who are... So the space for civil society voice is being compromised largely. So they take you, they listen to your voices, but do they take it to cognizance? No. But if they have a suggestion from a UN agency or World Bank or some other agencies, they take it for hook, line, and sinker. They think is the truth. And you that is going to the communities, talking to the people, your perspective are tagged, are described as illogical, as undermining investment, as this and that. So this is actually the challenge. You may say they say, but if you are not listening to, if your suggestions are not taken on board, and again, I will say again, some of the decisions are critical because they affect the economic interest of other people. For instance, if you say government should reduce expenditure, it is going to require cutting down on salaries. It is going to require stopping international travels. It is going to require laying off some people in the offices. So this is actually a critical decision that normally government find it difficult to make. But you overall, you will say, what do we do? Let us keep talking. And that is what we have been doing. We talk every day, we write policy papers, we organize meetings, and at a point, some of them are normally taken on board. They may not all be taken on board at the same time. That is how now we are having a community development fund quota increase from 0.01% to 1%. And maybe in a subsequent review, we may be fighting for 3 to 5%.
Well, Bems Komba Lebie, thank you very much for being a part of Sierra Leone Decide this beautiful Saturday evening. And I think for at least one good reason, it is why today you went out there to cast your vote. At least you are part of that change and just keep driving that force. Thank you very much, Bems.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Very well. Mr. Mamadou Cho.
Yes.
We had a long chat with Bems, and I'm sure you took a note of some of the things he said. But I personally noted down 4 points. First, he said the fight against corruption. 2, international borrowing. 3, tax leakages. And 4, overspending.
Yeah, these are big problems in most African countries. Mm-hmm. And even when you look at Madabio in 2018, when he wanted to be elected, one of his promises was, to fight corruption. But at the head of his presidency, when we listen to BAM, we conclude that it's a failure because corruption is still a big problem in Sierra Leone. And, if we succeed in tackling these 4 points you mentioned, mm-hmm. I think it's mean that the country is on the no matter which country it is. This country is on the right track because you cannot develop depending on the money coming from outside, and because this way of development has in fact underdeveloped the country. And we know that 2 days ago there was an international summit which took place in France. They were talking about this issue. Even this morning, I was listening to The Economist, the former Prime Minister of Benin. They were debating on, the African way of developing, because we are trying to follow the footsteps of the Western world, and it can take time. It took time for them to be developed. Maybe we have to invent our, proper way of development, because for each continent has its own reality, and we should not trying to follow the other countries' way of development.
So countries will have to look for country-specific solutions.
That's it. And I think the first thing to put in advance is patriotism. I think we cannot develop our country if we are not patriotic. And it's when you look at our leadership, we have to blame them for that. Most of the leaders who even they are democratic elected, they lack patriotism.
Well, just before I let you go, Mr. Mamadou Cho, we promised to have 1 hour of talk. I want to keep it beyond time. What are expectations from Sierra Leone's votes today? What are expectations?
I think what can happen at the end of the day, the incumbent Madabio can be re-elected, or Samura Kamara, I mean, can be the new face. And no matter what happened, I mean, the democracy in Sierra Leone would be the winner. We have to pray, not to see, some kind of protest at the end of all the operation of this day with the voting, because the opposition is not trying to match the president of the Electoral Commission, and when you have this situation, it's not a good thing. But it's up to the chairman of this commission to show that he's the man of the situation. But I think when you look at, I repeat it again, with this delay, I mean, it does not, it is not something good for those people who are not trusting him to have, to think that maybe he's the man of the situation. But we know that the country has come a long way. So far, the peace is fragile, but at least we can be proud of seeing, a political change when Julius Maada Bio was elected. In 2018. If it happened tonight, it will be a very good thing. I think that would be the better thing to happen for the country, because Samura Kamara, we were talking about the economy. He's a banker, so our BAM said that Julius, if we judge him on the economy, he was not the man of the situation, because he's a military. He's a former general of the army. But the Kamara has the chance to be a banker. I don't say that he maybe
automatically qualifies to fix the economy.
To fix the economy. That at least, between a military and a banker, for the person who is better equipped to fix the economy, I think it's the banker. So if Samura Kamara maybe is elected tonight, maybe he can try to better the lives of Sierra Leoneans.
Well, thank you very much for your contributions this beautiful Saturday evening, sir.
You're welcome.
Now, that's Mr. Mamadou Choro, a political analyst based here in Dakar, Senegal. Well, if you are just tuning in, it's 2 minutes past the hour of 6 p.m. here on West Africa Democracy Radio, Dakar, Senegal. We are live on WADR.org and on YouTube and Facebook, WADR News. Now, let's go straight to Kenema district in Sierra Leone, where Philip Koroma is standing by with the latest. Now, good evening, Philip.
Yes, good evening, West Africa Democracy Radio.
I'm pretty much excited, and I want to start with what excites me right now. Has counting commenced in Kenema?
Yes, indeed, counting has commenced in Kenema district as prescribed by the electoral laws of this country, stating that electioneering period starts at 7 a.m. and is expected to end at 5 p.m. So indeed, in most of the centers I visited, polling had ended at exactly 5 p.m. But that does not in any way mean voters are not in queues. So as I speak to you, most of the centers that were empty even before 5 p.m., they've completed counting for the various political parties and their representatives.
Now, tell me, were there issues or were there complaints of irregularities? APC has largely in several other districts of Sierra Leone complained or alleged of electoral irregularities.
Well, in this part of the country, Kenema to be specific, which is actually perceived to be the stronghold of the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, in most of the centers I visited today, none of the political parties had reported of any electoral irregularities. One that is actually common amongst the challenges or complaints lodged ranges from one, mismatch of names or omission of names. Registrants or voters wanting to come and vote will have their names missing from the data. So these were all concerns raised by the various political parties. And the other issue also they raised was the fact that people who actually got their voters' ID card missing. Before this time, the commission had said they will be given slips and allowed to cast their votes. But today, once you have the slip that has been issued to you by the Electoral Commission, as a result of your missing voters' ID card, you will definitely not be allowed to actually cast your vote. And this is happening because the two major political parties, the Sierra Leone People's Party, which is the ruling one, and the main opposition Congress, APC party, have all recruited party agents deployed to every polling center. So these polling agents that we have here, as we call them polling agents, are the eyes of the various political parties they are representing. So indeed, the concerns raised, like I just mentioned, range from one, missing or mismatch of names, and that of omission. So those are the two major concerns here so far.
Now, tell me, Philip, what was the turnout like in the Kenema district?
Say again?
What was the turnout? Can you really say how much, or can you describe the turnout rate, of voters in Kenema?
Well, the turnout rate for voters in Kenema actually is indeed impressive. Mm-hmm. That is according to what the polling center managers told me. Of course, very early in the morning, before 7 a.m. in fact, you will have long queues at all centers. And the voters turnout, like I just mentioned to you, is indeed encouraging as per the time they actually close. For some centers, you will have where you are supposed to have 300, you will have voters that will amount to like 200 or even 180. So the polling center managers indeed told me that indeed the voters turnout is indeed encouraging.
Well, so far so good with Kenema, that is. Hello, Philip.
Yes.
Well, but just before I let you go, at least we know that more than 1,000 election observers, were deployed across Sierra Leone. What are they saying so far? What is their assessment of the election overall?
Yes, well, the international observers, indeed, we are deployed and we are actually visible and seen in most of the centers that I visited. You will talk about the European Union, the ECOWAS mission, and many others. We are actually deployed and we are visibly seen. Mm-hmm. But as at the moment, they've not spoken to any of us here in Kenema, especially with regards to their findings. All they will refer us to, should we want to hear from them, they will actually put out their position via press statements or press releases coming from their head office in Freetown.
Well done. Thank you very much, Philip Koroma, there from Kenema district of Sierra Leone. Many thanks. We'll catch up with you much later for updates, please. Well, we still remain in Sierra Leone, but this time we go straight to Makeni district where Hassan Fore is standing by. Hassan.
Yeah.
Good evening. Good to hear you and good to have you join us on this edition of Sierra Leone Decides.
Thank you very much.
So tell us, has counting commenced in Makeni?
Oh, well, the Electoral Commissioner, the boss, actually extended the voting period on to 6 p.m. And as it is from the center where I am, actual counting has not started, but the process has already begun.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what is the general situation, Hassan? Let's talk about the turnout rate, were there complaints, about a mismatch of names on the voters list and all that.
Let me start with the turnout. The turnout was actually huge. As I told you this morning, queues, we started having queues in the various centers as early as 4:35 a.m. in the morning. whereas official voting time should be at 7 o'clock. And relatively, voting has been very peaceful, and in some of the centers, it was actually smooth. Voters will have to spend between 5 to 10 minutes to go through the process. So to a large extent, centers actually exhausted the number they had by mid-afternoon. However, in a number of centers, it was all different. A few centers here in Bombali district, and especially Makeni, specifically the center in Makeni, RC Kolokolo, there were allegations of ballot stuffing. The people there that we spoke to, eyewitnesses, said the alleged allegation over 2 men who they said came to the center with 2 Ghana must go traveling bags loaded with voter slips already voted on. And according to the eyewitness, they said they were picked up by voters. And so that led to a standoff of, it actually led to the intervention of the police.
And so they have been apprehended, that is.
Yeah, well, right in front of me, in my presence, the 2 alleged were actually apprehended and the police took them away. And a similar incident also occurred in a few stations across the city and beyond. Quite apart from that, in almost every center that I have visited up to now, there were voters whose names were not found on the register, and so therefore they were not allowed to vote because their names were not found. You know, the issue was taken to ECSL, and they actually tried to settle it, but in one of the centers, the Baptist Primary School in Makeni, where over 200 voters said their names were not found, they were seriously affected.
200 voters, Hassan. 200.
Around 1 p.m. today. Yes, over 200 of them. And of course, they halted the voting process since 1 p.m. And then up to 4:30, when I last visited and left, they were still putting modalities in place for the voting to resume again. You know, and this particular situation is also evident in a number of other centers in the Bombali district.
Well, at least ECSL announced an extension of the deadline, or closing hour of the election. So perhaps by now they should have been attended to, right?
Again, please, I did not get you.
I said the ECSL announced an extension of the closing hour of polls in Sierra Leone. So just maybe by now these individuals should have received some sort of attention from the commission.
Yeah, they extended the time. It was supposed to wrap up by 5. They extended an hour. So 6, and by what he said, all voting should have halted by now. But that center that I told you, if 1 hour at the time they added, well, unfortunately, a lot of people will not be able to vote because a lot of them were there. And even up to 4:30 when I left, they were still there trying to put this to give them the opportunity to vote.
Now, most of them were there, like you rightly said, from 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, thereabout. What do you think will be their reaction going forward? I mean, they wouldn't just let their effort, their energy, go to waste. Their fundamental civic right. They wouldn't let this go to waste. What action did any one of them? I'm sure people would threaten actions if this happened, really. What did they say? What have they said?
Well, they have raised a lot of concerns, especially members from the main opposition, the All People's Congress. They went to the ECSL. I was there. I spent an hour there. And there was some skirmishes in one way or the other. And to be honest, even as they actually told everybody that after you vote, you should go back home, almost all of them are still present in all of the polling centers. They are waiting to see what the outcome would be. They want to be present where counting will be done. You see, and a lot of them, they are, of course, they are making sad comments that if the votes do not reflect their votes, they will take action.
And this action is what a lot of people have really feared for just before the polls. With reports that the election in Sierra Leone is taking place amid high tensions of tense political climate. But just before I let you go, Hassan, in 2018, Sierra Leone had this election that brought in the incumbent Julius Maada Bio. What is different this time? Because across Sierra Leone, all the correspondents we've spoken to, you all said that voters' turnout rate was massive, or is massive. Now, what do you think is responsible for this?
Yeah, the possibility is that. Let me start with the differences first. I have to be honest. The number of issues that came up during this election period here in the Bombali district cannot be compared to what we recorded in 2018 and even in 2012. There were a lot of issues, a lot of them, and a good number of people have already been apprehended by the police and the police net. Even though the police have not spoken to, they have not responded yet on the status of those they arrested. They took to their police stations, and of course, ECSL too has not given to any of the issues or concerns raised for us to actually be able to report on them. So the turnout this 2023 is, for me, is bigger than what we actually saw in 2018. And it actually shows enthusiasm. Being Bombali district being one of the districts that the main opposition party have gone through a lot. They have been intimidated. The economy is not in good shape. They name a lot of things, which actually led them to wake up very early this morning to go and cast their votes, and which is also keeping them onto this time at the polling centers because they actually want to see the outcome.
Well, thank you very much, Hassan, for those updates. ECSL has said that results should be announced or will be announced at least in 48 hours. So we'll keep in touch and make sure that we have the latest from your end, Hassan.
Yeah, no problem.
Very well. Do enjoy the rest of the evening. This is Sierra Leone Decides here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal, and online on WADR.org. We are also streaming live on WADR.org, on YouTube, WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English Service. Still on Sierra Leone, UNICEF's latest developed statistics reveals that 83% of girls and women aged 15 and 49 have had their clitoris ripped off through female genital mutilation, FGM, and early child marriages of women aged between 20 and 24 years account for 30%. To outlaw early forced marriage and FGM against minors, the Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs decried its commitment to outlaw FGM in July 2022 and amend the Child Rights Act. Now, other rights protection for women and children has also been as follows. The enactment of the Customary Land Rights Act, which gives women an equal right to own and use family land in August 2022. The signing of the Public Election Bill 2022 into law, which stipulated that 1 in 3 parliamentary candidates be women by the President in September 2022. National Assembly passage of the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Bill, which stipulates that 30% of all positions in government and in companies with at least 25 employees be reversed for women in November 2022. And finally, that the government embarks on a mass nationwide reintegration of children physically challenged, pregnant, girls who dropped out of school, children living under unsanitary conditions, and from poverty-stricken homes, with a total count of 800 school-going children in 2022 alone. On gender issues, here's Christopher Mesa. He has more details.
According to the United States Agency for International Development in 2018, women accounted for 52% of the country's total population, but occupy less than 20% of elected positions. Their voice, visibility, participation and representation in elective and appointment positions remain very low compared to men. Some of these challenges include lack of economic independence, high illiteracy and entrenched customs and traditions, political violence, the absence of progressive laws that protect and promote participation for women, and the lack of confidence to vie for public positions. The retired Brigadier Julius Madabio-led government took power in 2018, with human capital development being its core ticket of delivery through the free quality education program. Their tenure has elapsed. Today, I am taken to the streets of Koidu City, the diamond-rich district, Kano, Eastern Sierra Leone, to sound the views of people regarding the changing gender dynamics over the past 5 years. Christiana Yaibeto Kamwewa is an activist and first asks her on what are the changing gender dynamics over the past 5 years.
Of course, the transformation is a huge one and a very positive one for the past 5 years to now. If we can take a look at the GWE bill that was passed in the parliament for the inclusion and participation of women in governance, it's a very good one and it's a welcome one, and especially women are happy about it, because past 5 years or before now, women were marginalized, discriminated, and they are given a lot of focus or attention to involve into political activities or into governance. For the past 5 years to now, especially this election, we've seen a lot of women participating and aspiring for different positions, and they are encouraged and they are given a lot of support. And I'm sure if the election is successful, we'll be having a lot of women in the world of parliament.
Right. A lot of people do not believe in women and also their participation in governance and other things. And even among some group of women as well, women do not believe in themselves. With this particular transformation, that is the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Act that you made mention of, which gave a minimum of 30% quota for women to be represented in governance and other areas of work. Do you think this is by any means going to contribute to a kind of wider change in national development and also in narrowing a gap between men and women in Sierra Leone?
Sure. It has started already. The change has started. It was a stereotype against women that they can't do it. They are not capable, even amongst colleague women. They have been pulling themselves down because of one reason or the other. But it was a stereotype. But I want to affirm to you of what I see, what is happening, and what I know, that for now, women are participating, they are getting themselves involved into activities, they are taking the front lead for developmental change, they are taking the lead, they are supporting themselves, no more discrimination, no more pulling themselves down, no more marginalizing themselves, and they're ready to support themselves. And even other men or other people are supporting women because they've seen that women inclusion and participation will serve as a great change. We help the country or the societies to change from the point and to the point where we want it.
Well, to understand further on the positive transformations on gender issues, Tamba Stephen Gauja is a social worker and a community advocate. In this dialogue, explain more on the policy transformation space and its impact on gender mainstreaming in Sierra Leone.
We must be sincere to say there are some changes that have taken place as far as I know, because coming up, I used to see my mother, I used to see my sisters, the way they used to live and the way they were restricted to opportunities. These are not what we say for now, especially in the last 5 years. I'm not actually citing any government here, but the government under which we were for the past 5 years had actually tried to actually emancipate women. Institutionally, but also legitimately. They did it within the brackets of the law. Because recently, the parliament that has closed passed a bill into law that has given 30% quota to women to access public positions, to access jobs and other things. Even in the NGO where we work, it is also said government is compelling all NGOs to ensure that whilst they employ people, if 10 people are to be employed, at least 7 are men and 3 must be women. That is a gain that we have seen so far in the past 5 years. We've also seen where women are now, like for example where I am, we now have the first female parliamentarian. That has never happened in Kono district here. We now have that. And we also had councillors in the local councils, like for example in the city and the district council. We had them in the councils. And even the elections that we are actually observing, you have women going for positions of trust. And we have also seen where women in Kono district have established organization, exclusively women organization. One is there that is called Women in Development. It used to be Women in Need of Development. I admire that organization so much because they said they are no longer in need of development. They also have to be part of development. They have to be architects of development. So you see that women now have the zest, the zeal to push their own welfare. They're now leading their own welfare. So it's a considerable one.
Mariama Sangari, the vice president of the Young Women in Governance Network, said the platform to advance gender issues has been laid and has led to changes.
Well, it's been a plus on our side as young women because the platform has been laid down for us where we can have access to equality and where we can have access to be in offices, talk about our rights and see how best we can take issues and discuss issues out there to people, and our problems are to be addressed.
Access to capital by women as opposed to men serves as a bottleneck that keeps many women in economic deprivation.
That is the challenge I was going to talk about because we still have this gap existing. Women access to resource, financial resource. It's a challenge in Sierra Leone as I'm talking, because there is almost a phenomenon that men are stronger, men have the advocate, they have the network, and if you're a woman, you have to access resource. There are other things that actually are challenges. For example, if you are the manager and a woman is to have access to a finance opportunity that has come, some women will tell you until that manager or that person in charge of that opportunity has an affair, for example, a relationship, to go extra mile, the woman has to go extra mile to be able to get access to that opportunity. So that's the challenge. Women have little or no access to finance here. But the tragedy is, in the rural places, women are the financiers of homes. They keep the homes, in fact. They have to labor themselves. They have to even feed the family. The men only come around to eat. The women will tell you that. So it's a tragedy in Sierra Leone.
Gender, though being a shared concept, but most often resonates to women as a result of their perceived vulnerability. This is what is hoped for in the coming years for women in Sierra Leone.
For the next 5 years, we want to see more changes different from this one that is happening now. We want to see more women participating in politics. We want to see more women occupying positions and a lot of offices. We want to see more women taking the front lead, because if we invest in women, we will see a change. There will be a change. We want to see women participation. We want to see women occupying higher positions in organizations and some higher institutions.
Yeah, I see a country where women will be in partnership with men in terms of development. There's going to be that, if not equality, but equity amongst them, because you're never going to get equality at all. Nature itself is not going to allow that. So women will be in kind of equity with men. So that Land Rights Act is something very important, because before now, especially in the rural places because Sierra Leone is by colony and also in the territory, around in the peripheral areas where we are, land is being governed by chiefs, and most chiefs are men. You hardly see a woman that is a chief. So you see men coming in around land. They decide as to who to give land and who not to give land. But with this law in now force, I think women are now going to have access to land, despite the fact that the fear is going to be there for a woman to come to say, I want this piece of land. You see a man having many hectares of land, but if a woman comes for that, they will say, what are you doing with that land? What do you want to do? But if we now have that in law and it is working, definitely women will have access. Like we are talking about resource challenge. Women will be established, they will come with factories, they do their work there, and then they make their lives better, and the world keeps going.
Coming 2028, I'm sure we'll have 50% that time around, so that where women can take the lead, and the transformation that have started already is the pro, because it is already working, because we can see now women are going in for positions that before now we are not going for it, and we are seeing more women that aspired for councillorship, members of parliament. So come 2028, honestly, we're going to have a president, a woman president in this country, and that's the most.
Of course, that was an overview report by Christopher Misa on gender issues in Sierra Leone. And he's already also standing by to join us with updates from Kono district, where he is at the moment. Good evening, Christopher.
Yes, good evening, and good evening to listeners.
Very well. How are you this evening, Christopher?
Well, I'm safe, and I have been ups and down monitoring situation here as the voting still continues.
Well, the voting still continue, as in for those who were on the queue when polls closed, or it's yet to close for people in voters in Kono district.
All right. The official time, according to the ECSL, for voting is at 5 p.m. But because of the delay that was experienced during this morning's exercise, the start of voting for many centers, and the time was extended. But originally, it is also part of ECSL's schedule that if it is 5 p.m. and people who are voting are in the queue, and it is already 5 p.m., they will have to extend the time for them to vote. So that is what we are currently observing here. I'm at the city center of Koidu. I've been observing most of the voting centers as well within the municipality of Koidu. And there are some little bit incidences of violence, like one center which is located at community area in the municipality of Koidu. We have some supporters of the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, who we are.
Yeah, Christopher, I can hear you.
Yes, we have some supporters of the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, who we are moving around with some vehicles and with some thugs at some specific polling centers within the municipality. And they were pelting stone at each other, that is supporters of the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, and that of the main opposition, All People's Congress political party. They were pelting stone at each other at the community field area within Koidu municipality. But the situation was calmed by the presence of some police and military personnel who intervened. And also there were some other areas of confrontations as well between these two political parties. We are in another incident that I observed. One of the supporters of the main opposition political party, slapped the supporter and also an observer of the Sierra Leone People's Party at one polling station located at Lebanon area in Koidu. But that situation as well, the police and other law enforcement agents as well intervened in the situation. And as earlier on, as I reported this morning, we are having some centers where voting couldn't start until 1 p.m. this afternoon.
1 p.m.
We don't know, yes, 1 p.m. this afternoon. Like a couple of hours ago, I went to the ECSL regional district office in Koidu, and I asked the deputy coordinator for ECSL, the district lead, deputy manager. I asked him what was responsible, but he couldn't give any explanation regarding that. So I've been monitoring. It is a file of chiefdom from the municipality. I've been monitoring what has been going there. Before these reports, what I gathered from there is that voting is still in progress there, and a lot of people are showing up in their numbers for them to vote. But the questions that keep on coming from a lot of people, and the assumption that keep on coming, is that what is going to happen with the counting process there, in as much as the voting didn't start on the speculated time that it was supposed to that's supposed to start, and the voting is going to continue. How transparent is the counting process and other exercises is going to be? But party agents are present in all of those locations where this voting started. So
and you also have the observers present too, right? I mean, representatives of CSOs.
Yes, we have observers, and also we have people who are moving around, international observers who are moving around, and we have also local observers who are also present in those locations. So it is expectation that those observers will observe all of those irregularities in terms of the voting process and also the delay in the processes, and as well come out with their recommendation or position regarding all of this.
Now, Christopher, being human, I worry about one thing, that for most of these people, they were out of their homes as early as 5 or 6 a.m. To take part in the process that only for them began by 1 p.m. Does it mean that the voting might really go into the night and maybe the early hours of Sunday?
Well, for now, I will not make any position on that, because the ECSL, from their earlier release that was stated, is that the voting process is going to only be for a day. So if the voting didn't start on time, according to their procedures, the vote will be extended onto the time that all the voters who are in the queue for the 5 p.m. period until they finish voting and the counting process will start. But for now, we haven't got any position from the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone regarding the extension of the voting period onto Sunday. There's explanation on that. So what we know for now on ground is that the voting is going to be, and the counting process as well is going to be for today, and thereafter they will compile all of those results and send it to the regional offices across the country and send it to the ECSL headquarters in Freetown for the pronouncement of the results. And according to what we gathered, is that the boss for ECSL has stated prior to the election that they are going to make pronouncements of the election results 48 hours after. We don't know how well that is going to be, fitted, or how well that is going to be done.
Especially
because of
that,
all of these things
yes,
that today, the late voting and all of these processes. But so far, we are monitoring the situation, and we'll keep on surveillancing all of those things that are emerging from most of the polling stations.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher Mesa, all the way from Kono District, Sierra Leone. You just keep following and monitoring while we here follow the updates, right?
Yeah, we'll continue. I'll continue to monitor. And it is also interesting to note that there are some polling stations that they've started counting already, because a few polling stations received the voting materials on time, and those polling stations, a good number of them, have already, the voters that are there showed up in their numbers, and they've started a counting process. But the release of provisional results and other things is yet to be done.
Well, one last thing, Christopher, before I let you go. At least a majority of Sierra Leoneans had this fear that the election might really not be peaceful, but it's not peaceful.
Well, to some other people as well, if you talk to them, they will tell you the election is not as peaceful as how it is supposed to be. Because if you move around, you hear about some people having claims and allegations. And one of the locations that I recently visited, there were claims around from people who are standing by the polling center, saying that they have suspicions that some supporters stalwarts of the Sierra Leone People's Party are having boxes that are filled with ballot papers that they want to go and exchange, at the polling station. But that remains to be an allegation. We cannot confirm that. But the area of the free and fairness of the election, if you ask different people, they have different opinion about it. And quite recently, we also saw a video release that has been going viral from from the leadership of the main opposition, All People's Congress Party, that they are dissatisfied with some aspect of the process, and also at the northern parts of the country, there are some good number of voters whose names were omitted from the voters register. So all of these people, they consider all of these to be threats, and also they consider all of these to be, something that would deter the smooth conduct of the election. But it remains the position of ECSL to clarify those allegations that have been levied against them. But so far, we've not seen any press release or counter statements regarding all of those claims that the main opposition political party has been raising in the northern parts of the country.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher Misa. Thank you.
All right.
Well, across the border in Guinea, many are optimistic that the elections in Sierra Leone will pass off peacefully and keep the country on track for democratic governance. Like Conakry, Freetown was rocked by instability that triggered a chain of unconstitutional change of government with the incumbent President Julius Maada Bio at the time in 1996, a coup leader. The country was for more than a decade suffer civil war resulting in deaths. About over 2 decades, peace and calm reign in the country, even when many still bear the scars of the emotional and psychological injuries. In Guinea, unconstitutional power shift is still a hurdle, something Fayemi Leone, a politician and opposition leader of the FNDC, says can change should this country release itself of old memories like Sierra Leone.
So far, after that civil war, what we have noticed is the country is being better in terms of democracy, given the situation of Sierra Leone. I will say the situation in Sierra Leone is even better than some other Francophone countries. It is a country that has an experience, a conflict experience. They will take that into account and not try to manipulate the elections, because most of the time in Africa, what happens is it is when elections are manipulated that will create conflicts. I am confident that everything is going to be better. This time, the elections seem to be more close to call between Dr. Samura, Kamara, and Maada Bio.
Well, sir, what do you think has been the influence of Guinea, being a neighboring country? Do you think the current situation in Guinea is somewhat rubbing off on Sierra Leone?
Of course, because, African countries, every time there is a problem in one of them, it is finally everybody suffering. When the civil war was going on in Sierra Leone, Guinea has paid the price. So that's why even Sierra Leoneans are looking very closely at what is happening here in Guinea. Because if there is any problem here in Guinea, it is going to affect very badly Sierra Leone.
Well, sir, what do you think about the fact that just lately, protests erupting from the citizens as, protesting against the ruling government? Do you think this is that agitation that requires a change of government? Are we going to see that play out in this election?
It may not be because it happened. It is a game that people are playing.
How do you mean by a game, sir?
It is a game because having some people demonstrating against the government is not something we can call as the fact of, the action taken by the majority of people. So we are looking closely at what is happening. Myself, I have close relations with Sierra Leone. My mom was born in Sierra Leone. So I am in Sierra Leone almost every 2 months.
Well, talking about West Africa, we know that elections, democracy in West Africa has been shaky for a couple of years now with the, junta which we're seeing in Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Mali. How crucial are elections, especially in West Africa?
It is very crucial. That's why ourselves, we are all the time calling upon the ECOWAS leader to, take the situation very seriously. Look at what is happening now in Dakar. Mr. Macky Sall has not said anything yet, as he will seek a third term. But why he is not saying anything? Even though myself, I am not asking him for that. He did 2 terms, he just has to go. And that is how the problems start. And if that happens in Senegal, I am scared that the situation can be worse. So ECOWAS has to take, the situation more seriously and help those countries with the junta, Guinea, Mali, and Burkina Faso, to manage the transitions, the constitutional elections. They will be very crucial in Mali, in Guinea, in Senegal, in Burkina Faso. Even those elections happening now in Sierra Leone, they are very crucial. And ECOWAS leaders have to look closely, not to try to back, the head of states just because, they want to protect somebody. If they do that, West Africa will be in trouble again. We remember what happened in Liberia. We remember what happened in Africa. We remember what happened in Sierra Leone, what is happening in Mali. So we need to be very, very careful with those elections. Either we want democracy and we make sure it is implemented as it should, or we don't want democracy. And now nobody can come back.
Usually, some people would say that, when you have military rule, there is some form of respect, obedience than that of the democratic government. How can you compare this two?
The democratic government is way better. But what we've been, noticing is the political leaders are the problem.
How?
Look at what happened in Guinea. Alpha Condé fought, in the opposition for 4 years. He was against Sékou Touré and Lansana Conté because those people manipulated constitutions to stay. And that is exactly what he did. And when we see today what is being done in terms of infrastructure by the junta compared to what happened during the 11 years of Alpha Condé, population have a mixed ideas about, the democratic ruling and the junta, the military ruling. But it is way better to have a democratic, a legitimate, government in place.
There you have it, Dr. Faya Milimono, a Guinean politician and leader of the FNDC, that is Front for the Defense, National Defense, FNDC. Well, up next is Mamadou Niang, a network engineer who is from Sierra Leone but now lives in Senegal. Niang, like thousands of Sierra Leoneans, left the country after the civil war. He tells WADR about his time in Sierra Leone during the war and the need for peace.
I still remember, I have some short memory about the Civil War, though I was not staying in the rural area because I was living in Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. But during the Civil War, I remember displaced people came in from villages. We were having many people coming from the rural area to seek refuge in Freetown. I remember also the overthrow of one of our presidents, Alhaji Mohammed Kaba. Yes, because during that time there was a military coup. I really remember and I didn't forget about those coup. There were many people, there were looting, killings, and also that was my first time to see child soldier enter in the capital. And also it was a very difficult moment for us because we were on embargoes, food not entering, no schools, no medical facilities. It was really difficult, and it was a very, traumatized memory.
How about your family members? Was any one of them hurt? How did it happen eventually that you had to leave Sierra Leone? Was the Civil War one among the reasons that your family left Sierra Leone?
Yes, it was part of the reason. That's why I left Sierra Leone. And my families were victims of the Civil War because for my grandmother, village was attacked and there were people killed there and also some people injured because I have one of my uncles and one of my aunts also. She was a victim of the past Civil War. And really, that was the fact and the reason why I migrated to Senegal, because my father is a Senegalese, by the way, and I have a Sierra Leonean mother, and I was born in Sierra Leone. So during the war, the militaries and the rebels, they formed a group called AFRC, and they invaded Sierra Leone, and there was no security, and it was very difficult. So it was so scary, and it was not safe. And by then, my mother decided to migrate with us to Senegal, to our father home.
Well, I'm sorry that you have to live with this scar because, losing someone right in front of you, being killed, not because they died a natural death, is something you cannot forget. But you made it out of Sierra Leone, and here you are in Senegal. You've built a life for yourself and your family as a professional. Do you still have relatives back home in Sierra Leone? What do they tell you? And compared to what they say and what you have seen during your travel to different countries, and that you right now reside in Senegal, what comparisons do you have?
Well, I still have relatives in Sierra Leone. I still have relatives in Sierra Leone, and I'm in contact with them. And to be frank enough, because since 1998, we moved from Sierra Leone to Dakar. I have so many comparisons because, like, Senegal is a peaceful country. I've been to Senegal. I've also been to Banjul, Gambia, and I've also once traveled abroad, Europe, Italy. I think Sierra Leone, there are so many things to be changed over there. You understand? And for example, I will give an example of Senegal because I've spent most of my time in Senegal. Since 1998 to now, it's about 25 years, So in terms of, in terms of development and infrastructure, Senegal is more advanced than Sierra Leone. And people really want to move out of Sierra Leone because all the time, like you said, our relatives, some of my cousins and some of my aunties, they are always... They want to move from Sierra Leone because of life is quite a little bit difficult, although not for everyone, but there are so many challenges there. Compared to Senegal, it's quite a little bit stable in terms of security and in terms of food and, health facilities. It's a little bit above of Sierra Leone, I can say.
And that largely is because Senegal has, over the years, enjoyed stable democracy through healthy democratic processes. And so, more on governance, tell us, how important do you think election is to democracy, especially that Sierra Leone is today voting for a new government?
Yes, I think democracy is a fundamental something important. It's very, very important for country to live in a democratic way because, Sierra Leone have gone a lot, since 1990, throughout the outbreak of the Civil War, and they are suffering a lot. And I think this is the best time to restore our democratical values. And it's very, very important to restore this democratic situation and atmosphere. So for me, the election should be a peaceful and transparent election. We need a peaceful and transparent election because we don't need no more violence and we don't need no more war. And it's really a fundamental thing for Sierra Leoneans to respect our democratical values.
What would be your key priority areas that you think the incoming government should take seriously in advancing Sierra Leone to join the League of Nations?
Yeah, because Sierra Leone is progressing little by little economically, as you said, and it's not easy, and we need to do more. So my take is like leaders should emphasize on creating job facilities and try to restore our industrial system, because I think there are many young people over there who are out of job, to say, and it's very, very difficult. I think leaders should put more emphasis on creating of job facilities. I think that will also boost up our economy, and also to create sophisticated health facilities, because for the past years now, and for decades, I can say, it is very difficult to find a real up-to-date health facilities. Many times, patients need to travel abroad for treatment, and it's very, very risky because in Senegal, for the past 25 years that I've lived here, we have treated cases like this many times. People coming from Sierra Leone for health facilities, and in many cases, they lose their lives. So I think government or the new leader should work and try to create good health facilities and also job for the youth.
I hope they are listening and will have to do the needful when it's time for them to make a change to better the lives of Sierra Leoneans. Now, Senegal, like you rightly said, is a peaceful country. But then in the last 2 years, we've had a series of riots. Now, each time this happens, does it remind you of something?
Yes. Obviously, it reminds me of something because of, I've gone through a situation like this, worst situation than this, and not only me, but many Sierra Leoneans living in Senegal, it reminds me of back, memories of the past war. Sometimes I'm quite a little bit scared, when I see this, this riot on television, it reminds me a lot about the past war in Sierra Leone, and it's given me some bad memories.
And so the only way you think that peace will last in countries in Africa and across the world is if only we stick true to democratic values, and that's why today Sierra Leoneans rather are going to the polls to elect a new government. So as they are in Sierra Leone while you are here in Senegal, what do you have to say to them?
Yes, democracy is a fundamental of, every country. It's a really value that people need to respect, especially our African leaders. They need to respect their vows, and they need to respect their words also, And my message out there is we really need peace. We really need a peaceful, non-violent election in Sierra Leone. really need peace, they should try to conduct a peaceful election, and also citizens will, citizens need to vote peacefully and avoid any violent situation that will spark a chaotic situation in Freetown, because, as I said earlier, Sierra Leoneans have got a lot, and many Sierra Leoneans are still suffering from this war. So we just need peace. Let's Sierra Leoneans vote peacefully and avoid any violent situation.
That was Mamadou Niang, a Sierra Leonean, now living in Senegal. And of course, you had there his story during the civil war in Sierra Leone, how he migrated to Senegal, how he has been faring, and what he hopes for. That would be some of the changes about coming in Sierra Leone as Sierra Leoneans today decide a new government, that is, voting in a new president, new members of parliament, and councillors. Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our live coverage of the 2023 general elections in Sierra Leone. Many thanks to the production team of Taufik Abdel Nasser, Ogebi Rika, Matisi, Maudo Juve, Francis Boniface, and Mustafa Sek. As a reminder, today, June 24, 2023, will be remembered not only by Sierra Leoneans, but Africa and the world at large. As the day, 3.3 million citizens in Sierra Leone went to the polls to elect a new government. I'm Abdullahi Hassan, and do stay with us, all through the weekend and the incoming week for details of, the results of these elections. I'm Abdullahi Hassan once again. Good evening.
You have just listened to the live coverage of the 2023 general elections in Sierra Leone. Stay tuned for our next live podcast coming shortly.
Actu de la semaine, analyse, décryptage et commentaires sur les sujets majeurs de la semaine en Afrique de l'Ouest. Sani Moumouni Seibou.
Bonjour à tous, Actu de la semaine est de retour et cette semaine nous analysons 3 actualités dans 3 pays différents. D'abord le Sénégal avec la sortie de 4 ministres du gouvernement jeudi pour intervenir et donner des éclaircissements sur la suite après les violentes émeutes du début du mois de juin. On va en parler. Nous parlerons également de la Guinée avec l'acquittement des 3 activistes du FNDC pour délits non constitués. Il s'agit de Omar Silla alias Fonike Mengue, Ibrahima Diallo et Saïkou Yaya Bari. Et nous allons terminer par le Mali qui vote demain dimanche pour le référendum constitutionnel. Les partisans du oui et du non se sont affrontés au cours d'une campagne assez mouvementée sur laquelle nous reviendrons.
La radioscopie de l'actualité ouest-africaine, c'est dans Actu de la semaine.
Le Sénégal donc avec la sortie jeudi de plusieurs ministres du gouvernement avec à leur tête Amadou Ba, le Premier ministre. Ces ministres de Macky Sall ont apporté au public les derniers développements liés à l'actualité relative aux violentes manifestations de début juin au Sénégal à la suite de la condamnation à 2 ans de prison ferme de l'opposant Ousmane Sonko pour corruption de la jeunesse. En bref, on retient que les enquêtes se poursuivent selon les ministres du gouvernement qui étaient face à la presse. Pour donc discuter de cette actualité sénégalaise, j'ai en ligne Abdoulaye Mbow, analyste politique sénégalais. Bonjour.
Bonjour à vous.
Amadou Kamara Gueye. Il est géopolitologue et spécialiste en gestion de crise. Bonjour Amadou Gaïb Kamara.
Bonjour.
Que pensez-vous de cette sortie de ces ministres? Est-ce que ça a contribué à calmer un peu les tensions au sein de l'opinion? Le Sénégal est encore sur le qui-vive. Abdoulaye Mbow.
Oui, je crois bien que tout le monde a constaté la sortie justement de 4 membres justement du gouvernement. Nous avons tous suivi avec attention les propos tenus par ces différents ministres, mais